When I arrived for my first year at Little Rock Catholic High School, one of the classes I was assigned to was Freshman Algebra 1. Now let me stop at this point and point out a well-known fact. There's two types of people in the world: those who like math and all the rest of us. Math has never been one of those classes that I look forward to. I loved reading, writing, social studies, anything that had to do with reading and that. And I really enjoyed those, geography and even some of the sciences. But I never really liked math. Sure, I could and still can add, subtract, multiply, divide, do fractions and percentages. But that's about as far as it goes. Even knowing that I could still do a lot of math, I had a lot of trepidation when I headed for my algebra class. We were seated alphabetically, and since my last name began with a B, I was seated in the first desk on the left side of the classroom, right in front of the teacher's desk. Mr. Palazzi was the algebra teacher, and he started by giving each of us in the front row a small piece of paper about this size. And we had a little stack of it, and we were told to pass them back. Then he said that we were going to have a quiz, and we had 2 minutes to complete the quiz, the problem that was on the board. And my classmates and I all were stunned. We haven't even had a lesson, and here we were going to be tested. I don't recall the exact question, but it had some numbers and letters in it. And it was, I can't remember the exact question, but it was like x divided by 6 plus y times 2 equaled 46. Well, the 2 minutes were up, and we were told to pass our papers forward and putting ours on top. Then Mr. Palazzi started on the right and came across and gathered all of them together, which meant my paper was going to be the very first one that he would see. Mr. Palazzi looked at my answer and smiled. Had I guessed right? Then he asked me to extend and explain how I'd come up with my number. After some he and hawing around, I told him I just guessed. And I spent a whole lot of time in front of the class for that entire year, because we had Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 with Mr. Palazzi, doing 2-minute tests to begin the class. And a lot of times I had to get up and explain my answer. Like my year with Mr. Palazzi, it seems like we're being tested all the time, and it never ends. Sure, if you're a student, you know that you have regular tests, and, sometimes we get pop quizzes. But these aren't the tests that I'm really talking about that we face in life. Perhaps we discovered we've been diagnosed with a real bad, serious illness. Or maybe we've lost our job and we wonder how we're going to pay the bills. A son or daughter is going through some marriage problems and we aren't sure how to help them. Perhaps a loved one passed away and we are overwhelmed with grief. We see somebody being treated unfairly by a friend and we have to choose. Do we stay silent or do we stand up for that person who's being treated unfairly and maybe lose a friend? Tests come up all the times in our life, and they're going to still come forever and ever. But trusting in Jesus, we always have an answer about whatever test we're facing. None of us are immune from being tested, not even Jesus. In last week's gospel, we heard how the Sadducees tested him by saying, "Is it lawful to pay the census tax to Caesar or not?" And Jesus responded, "Why are you testing me?" This week, it's the Pharisees' turns, and they're trying to trick Jesus. One of the scholars says, "Teacher, which command of the law is the greatest?" If they don't really care about the answer, they just want to have something on him. They want to have something they can charge him with. But let's review some of the other tests that Jesus had to go through in his life. Think about the 40 days he was tempted by the devil, the anxiety of knowing that John the Baptist was put to death for believing in him, the sorrow he felt for Mary and Martha at the death of Lazarus. Recall in that gospel, it said he wept. The disappointment of knowing that one of his closest friends, Judas, would betray him. and how Peter would deny him 3 times. Think about that night in the garden when he told his disciples, "My soul is sorrowful even to death," because he knew he was going to die the next day. Think about the loneliness he felt the next day when the crowd was screaming, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Well, how did Jesus make it through all these tests? How was he able to fulfill his mission? It was through prayer and his trust in the Father. Jesus' trust in God got him through his test. In that same formula, trusting in Jesus and his Father will get us through our test. Recall in John's Gospel, Jesus said, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Have faith in God and have faith in me." And later in Matthew, "Behold, I am with you always." There are over 100 passages in the Bible that echo the same sentiment. I Googled them, and it shows them all. Yeah, but I'll remind you, tell you one more that really strikes home to me. "Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest." Jesus is letting us know that he is always with us. No matter what we're going through, no matter how much anxiety or fear we're facing, he is there for us. This week, take your test to the Lord. Spend some extra time in the Adoration Chapel, asking for help and strength and listening to the Lord. Look up some of those 100 verses about trust in the Bible and read through them. Talk with somebody who's maybe going through the same test that you're going through. Ask them how they went through that situation. And perhaps there's nothing testing us right now in our lives, but we know somebody who's going through some tough times. Talk with them. Let them know that we're there for them. Even though I dreaded those 2-minute tests and having to explain my answers, I knew that Mr. Palazzi was not picking on me. He did this so we could learn the material, and I did. I think I scraped by with a C. But being tested is a never-ending part of life. But no matter how hard our tests are, we will always have an answer. Jesus is there for us, and he's going to be there for us no matter how many X's and Y's are in the problem.